on this Labor Day, I think we can all celebrate the work that the Denver Broncos are going to do this year to dispel all of the haters, all of the doubts, and we're starting to actually see across the NFL a little bit of Bo-LIEVE in this team, and we're going to break down the promising signs and take a look back at some of the receipts because we will never forget. We're going to break all that down and so much more a week before the Seattle Seahawks kickoff. Denver Broncos are back. If you're new to the channel, I'm Ben. I'm a diehard Denver Broncos fan. It helps me and the YouTube algorithm out a ton if you would hit that like and subscribe button. So I want to throw a couple quick receipts up here just to remind us like of the disbelief that we've seen and really like the garbage thrown our way all off season long. We saw ESPN came out with their power rankings and had the Denver Broncos almost the worst team in the entire NFL last year. And their prediction for this year is that, hey, we're going to be the 31st worst team in the entire NFL. Pro Football Focus had to do them one better and say, nope, that's too high. I think the Broncos are the actual worst team in football. And all this kind of stuff just like infuriated me, knowing that the Denver Broncos weren't even the worst team last year, that we were in the playoff hunt all the way to the end. We beat Patrick Mahomes once, and the game we didn't beat him, we only let him in the end zone one time as the Chiefs beat us by scoring 19 points on a Thursday night scheduled loss. We went into Buffalo and beat the Bills. We beat the Browns when they were hot. We beat the Vikings when they were hot. Like we beat some great teams, and we finished the year really like other than when we took Russell Wilson out, we finished the year like really hot. Our defense was humming. We were in a really good place. And so all that disrespect aside, we are moving forward. And I do think it matters. I think it matters because of the belief in the Mile High City. Like I want people packing the house for Russell Wilson's return. And I want us to know that like we have a good team and we have a team to cheer for, and we are going to shock the NFL this year. And an odds maker, a big book is coming out there and kind of backing that up. So if we truly had the 31st or 32nd worst team in the NFL, would Sean Payton be the co-favorite to be the NFL Coach of the Year? So according to a couple sources out there, I'm not really into sports gambling just because if I did that, my family would not have a home because I just bet on the Broncos every week. But they came out here and said that Sean Payton is the co-favorite because of the culture shift that Sean Payton has brought to Denver. And so that's really good news that really across the NFL, people are starting to believe what we have going here. Really cool article here that I just stumbled upon from a New Orleans website that just talked about how much Sean Payton has changed in his time in Denver and how magnetic he is bringing others there and how much what the Denver Broncos are doing this year mimics and mirrors what he did with New Orleans Saints. So this is an awesome article, and it just goes on to just call out how Zach Strief had just built the home of his dreams and had been in New Orleans for almost 20 years. And Sean Payton called, and he left everything and went with Sean Payton to be our offensive line coach. Who better to coach the offensive line than a very successful offensive lineman for Sean Payton? And we're seeing that with how he got our offensive line humming last year and constantly was one of the bright spots on our team and one of the top 10 on PFF. He said here, there's a magnetism to Sean Payton. If he calls, I'm gone. And that, like, you just can't, that as juxtaposed with how the national media portrays him and shows that highlight of him chewing out Russell Wilson, there's just a huge incongruity there that obviously Sean Payton is a fantastic coach. Just look at all he has sucked up into Denver from New Orleans. We have 11 coaches, 8 players, 3 other staffers, all who played with him or coached with him or worked with him in New Orleans. And that's fantastic. You see guys like Malcolm Roach talk about how they're coming here and excited with the familiarity, and they're excited to start something new and going on here that we are able to now mold the team in the way that Sean Payton envisions it. That's from Adam Troutman, who played tight end for him in New Orleans and now is a tight end here. And just seeing the culture change that he's done. And so I guess one of the stories goes that somebody was talking to Adam Troutman about how Nathaniel Hackett ran training camp and how there were food trucks and ice cream trucks and you didn't ever like wear pads. And that was the year, coincidentally, that we were the most injured team in football. And Troutman just looked at him and was like, well, that's nice, but that doesn't exist anymore. That's over. And even with these higher expectations and these more padded practices and more physicality and more competition, even renaming the street that our practice facility is on to Compete Street. Even with that, the Denver Broncos went to being one of the most healthy teams in the league, and that was because when your body's conditioned and used to it and you're always going at 100, you don't get injured as much. And that's awesome to see that. Some of the sneaky moves that we've done is being able to grab some of the offensive geniuses. So Joe Lombardi, who was with Payton with the Saints and then also with the Chargers, came here. And then we brought a pass game coordinator, a quality control coach. We were able to take their former director of scouting and make him a VP of scouting here. And just seeing the expectations that he's able to bring to Denver, and it's going to be a very, very good thing. Here's the portion about Cody Rager, who now became our vice president of player personnel, an amazing scout. He's the one who identified Kamara and identified Colston and all of those hits that Sean Payton had with the Saints, and now he's doing that for here, and that should be fantastic news for us as we look at this draft class, that we need a lot of those guys to hit. And then seeing here, this was really calls out that disparity between what the national media says about Sean and then, well, if he's really that villain, why are all these people coming with him? And he said this thing here, that it's really hard for Sean Payton to be the authoritarian and the disciplinarian that he is, with also having the ability and to develop relationships and to get a level of loyalty. And he has thread that needle perfectly. And I'm so, so happy that he is our coach. Just seeing that this challenge of rebuilding reminds all of these guys who came over from the Saints of the challenge of rebuilding with the Saints. The Saints are one of the worst organizations in the history of pro football, and that's not a biased take. If you go back, I did a video on it several months ago. I had no idea growing up, because when I grew up, the Saints were already starting to rebuild under Sean. I had no idea how bad they were. Like, people would wear paper bags over their heads, and they hadn't had Sean Payton eclipse their number of away playoff games in his first year of being the coach in their franchise history. And so just seeing here that the Broncos already last year had gone from a 5-win team to an 8-win team, with a quarterback who couldn't run a system, with a running back who was on a 2-year injury, without a tight end essentially. And he now has a culture in this building that reflects the culture that he wants. And we are brimming with young, talented players. And all of these guys are now having fun because you can see a bright future, and that's what makes it fun, according to Lombardi. So the hopes truly could not be higher right now in Broncos country. We have the players now to go out and make it happen. Another piece of information that recently just dropped is a lot of people in the national media were trying to act like the Broncos just lucked into Bo Nix, or perhaps when it first was reported, they were just saying, oh, the Broncos are going to draft whatever quarterback is left on the board at 12. And they all laughed about it and what was in his backpack, and I don't need to rehash that. And then several pieces of information have come out since then that verify that Sean Payton said before the draft began that Bo Nix was his guy. So Jay Glazer came out and verified that same claim and said Sean Payton called him and wanted to fly out and knock on Bo Nix's door when that pick was up and go in and surprise him. And Jay Glazer talked him out of that. And if that was not evidence enough that he was our guy, our owner came out and verified that same thing and said that it was either during the workout or immediately when the workout ended, Sean Payton called our owner and said, this is the guy. He's a perfect fit. And so Sean Payton got the quarterback he wants. He's already molded the rest of this team in the Sean Payton element that he wants. And I think the hopes should be very, very high for the Denver Broncos this year. Other information here is as we move into game week here, there's a lot of talk about how loud it is in Seattle, and is that going to be a problem for Bo Nix? And I think if any rookie quarterback, the fact that he played in the SEC and then in the Pac-12, and he already has played in Washington, although his record wasn't that great, Bo Nix has played in incredibly raucous environments that will make, honestly, playing in Seattle look like nothing. Like, some of those SEC stadiums are wild. Like, he's played in the Swamp, and I think it holds way more than the Seattle Seahawks stadium. And so I think Bo Nix is perfectly suited to go in and be very, very successful. Other news dropping here about there's been a lot of downgrading of how good Courtland Sutton is, and saying he's not truly a number one receiver. But what we heard today from Sean Payton is that there were a ton of calls about Courtland Sutton, and I think this is just further proof that Courtland Sutton is a wide receiver one, and we're going to see that this year now that he is a quarterback who can get him the ball. So a lot of very, very exciting news in Broncos country. Got a great week of content here. Stay tuned so you don't miss a single second of it. I am doing my first ever watch party, so make sure you're there. If you are like so intense that you don't want to watch with anyone, not even your mom, that's totally fine. I get it. That's how I typically am too. I'm going to try to be safe for work, but no promises. There is a mute button on my board here, so I can do that. But it's going to be an awesome week. We have a lot to believe in.